Hello and welcome back inside the Part for May for podcast number 901. Oh, the Dutch Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do on race weekends.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do on race weekends. And in order to do that, though, I have to actually go find someone that knows what he's talking about, because I certainly don't if you read the comment sections of our podcast. And that means I got to go find him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul.
Yes.
Double podium for Heart of Racing this weekend.
Yeah, not too shabby.
Pretty nice in the
Right.
SRO,
In the heat of Virginia, we came through.
VIR.
Yeah. It was a good weekend. Yeah, we made some strong gains in the championship for the Pro Car. Now we're only 17 behind the fan favorite Rexy the Dinosaur Porsche. It's like kids come up to our trailer and say, "Do you have the green dinosaur?" "No, get off. Get on your bike. Get out of here, kid." Yeah. So we made a lot of gains on that. So now it's going to be a dogfight the last two races of the year for the Pro Championship between us and them, and maybe the BMW that won. Actually, we should have had a slightly better finish. Had a slight disagreement with IMSA on fuel flow. But,
you went all George Russell on him, I see.
Yeah. No, it cannot be right. This isn't right. So we had a little disagreement on that, but so we got to drive through. But anyway, we will look deeper into that and see what was going on there. But yeah, overall, really, really strong. You know, everyone went away very, very happy.
Good.
Yes.
Good result.
Yeah.
Good result. I can't remember. Are you guys doing anything in Austin coming up?
We're doing World Endurance Championship in Austin. I'm leaving Thursday morning, heading down there. So yeah.
Okay. So for anybody in Austin, Paul will be there at COTA.
I will.
This coming weekend. Yep.
Yeah. It's gonna be a little different than Le Mans. Obviously, it's different thing entirely. So it's good though. They're fourth in the championship in the World Endurance Championship. So we'll see what happens. Should be a good place
pumped.
for the car.
He's psyched.
He's psyched. Yeah, get back behind the wheel. You know.
Yeah.
He had to do managerial duties this week, but he's such a strong driver for the bronze category in WEC that I think he eagerly anticipates getting to grips with that, because you need pace, but you need a lot of mental and skill and knowing how to run a race at the beginning there. So I think he loves doing that. I like watching him do it. It's a good place for him.
Yeah, that's good. That'll be exciting. Well, most fun. That's exciting. And you managed to get in the Dutch Grand Prix this weekend.
I did, yes, by hook or by crook. I didn't get in qualifying, just going to let you know. I got some practices in, but I didn't get qualifying in. We were just a shade busy this weekend. So.
You didn't see Logan scratch the paint there and needed to be buffed out?
I did see that, because that comes in the highlight reels. But
right.
that was not optimum, we'll call it.
No, it wasn't. Wasn't at all. Well, let's talk about the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. You know, this originally showed up on the F1 calendar all the way back in 1952, if you can believe it. But then it spent, somewhere around 3 decades off the calendar, and then they redid the track. I think they did a really good job of upgrading it, modernizing it.
The house that Max built.
The house that Max built, of course. And since it's been back, Max has won it all 3 times. So heading into this weekend, a lot of pressure, trying to go for that 4th win, which would have equaled, in my opinion, the GOAT, Jim Clark, 4 wins at a Dutch Grand Prix, and he would have equaled that with Jim. But did not happen, as the keen-eyed amongst you that watch the race this weekend will know. The banking is certainly the big talking point. I kind of tend to, it's kind of that old school track, Paul, but I do kind of like the flow of it. It feels like let me put it this way. It just feels like it would be fun to drive as a driver.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, I think the chicanes are a bit, what could I say, a little less flowy than the rest of the track. But for sure, it's a good flowing track, and the camber's kind of fun. When you're driving anything, kind of dig into the ground there, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
The left-hander is always the pointless inside move, just never works, does it? But how do you not go for it when you see, the heavens open up and everyone's off to the right, and you see this big amount of asphalt on the inside? It's got to work this time.
I know.
But
Alonso
no,
tried it.
it does not work.
Dove down inside. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
But he gave it a go.
Yeah, but it is interesting how camber changes so many things, even in a car with a massive amount of downforce, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a big difference in cars without downforce, but even cars with big downforce, that little bit of extra just, digs you in. It's cool.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the DRS zone, being able to deploy it on that high banking, that 19% banking on that final turn, I think they probably did that right. I mean, I'm not a fan of DRS period, but I guess, if you're going to get down that straight and you've got that much banking, then opening that DRS up and letting you fly around that banking seemed to make sense.
Right.
So there's that. The interesting part of the race for me, though, was, the weather was quite a bit different between Friday and Saturday, and you had the spot rains and the heavy winds, and I was kind of curious, as they were doing practice runs, who was running what compounds and why, and then they had the inters and the full wets, and it was a hodgepodge of just about everything. And I was kind of curious to see during the race how the tire wear rates and tire degradation would sort of unfold or reveal itself, not only between compounds, and then between compounds between teams, between chassis, right? And so if there's anything that kind of caught my attention in this race this weekend was really kind of watching that unfold. And, it was manifest in several, cars and their performance and where they finished. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point. Again, I'm not a huge high degradation tire fan at all, but at least it was something that was kind of compelling to watch.
Yeah, I mean, degradation comes no matter what the tire is. It's always a factor to be, used in. But I always say the split between teams was probably more exaggerated probably by the weather, where the teams didn't have enough data to try and sort their problems if they were having a problem with degradation.
Yeah.
But definitely you saw which chassis are kinder on the tires and not.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're kind on the tires and using that banking, that obviously can really manifest itself to a lot of speed.
Yeah, for sure. And then certainly a lot of talking point about Logan's crash during qualifying, which I mentioned, and then Lewis impeding Checo, right, and getting that three-place grid penalty starting down 14th. So that was kind of the highlights of qualifying, unfortunately, for Lewis. But apart from the impeding, which I just think it was wrong place, wrong time. Did he do anything untoward? No, but he couldn't just disappear either. Did it impede Checo? Yeah, probably did. But, either way, I don't think it was intentional.
Yeah, lucky we don't have those rules in IMSA, as was stated in the driver's briefing. Yeah. They don't even monitor it.
Oh.
I mean, they keep their eye on it, but there is no penalty for impeding. So they're kind of like, okay, there you go, kids. Sort it out amongst yourselves.
That's when Paul says, Robin's racing.
Yeah, that's right. That's
right.
Not necessarily the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, agreed. So anyway, let's jump in. We'll start off top, the sharp end of the grid. You've got McLaren. By the way, just for grace, here's your flag, Paul.
I see it.
See that on my shirt there?
Yeah.
You see
so you're supporting Williams? Oh.
The papaya should get. And on the back, it says McLaren.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah. So, I'm representing Lando here for you, Grace. Got that going for me.
You're probably going to jump to Man City fan club soon, too, right?
No. I'd jump to the Hammers before I did that.
All right. That's what I like to hear.
Yes. Or Villa or Bournemouth, maybe.
Really?
The Cherries, Paul.
Okay.
You like the Cherries?
No.
No?
But we're playing them next time, so there you go.
Are you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Let's see. McLaren, Lando Norris, P1, take a convincing, I might add, victory. His teammate Oscar Piastri down to P4. After Friday's practice, I messed up my fantasy picks. Something fierce this weekend. After Friday's practice, I had Oscar winning this race and Lando second, but boy, did I get that wrong. Lando had a terrific run despite losing the lead there at the start. Had a little too much wheel spin, couldn't get off. Max jumped in at the start, but it was very interesting to me to see that Max, he pulled a bit of a gap, but he doesn't disappear. And, he got about 1.5 second gap-ish, maybe. And then a few laps later, really saw that lead disappear quickly. And that's sort of manifest evidence of the tire degradation, right? And and how quickly that disappeared. It does bring that notion, though, Paul, that you and I have talked about on previous race, just how good McLaren's chassis is on the balance and on its tires, right? And how they manage those tires over the long run pace. Traditionally, I would have said over the last half dozen races that while Max may not be the fastest car on an outright one-lap pace, I did feel that Red Bull's long-run pace was still good, and there were certain races that seemed to hold true, but this race for sure at this track, the McLaren's long-run pace seemed great. Lando ended up with the biggest winning margin so far this year at 22 seconds in-ish. And if you divide, I'm just doing kiddie math here, guys, on a calculator, but if you take that 22 second,
we know how good that goes.
I know, it works great. I get called out every time. You're an idiot, dude. You got to flip the variable.
He won by 10,000 seconds. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm terrible at this. A kilogram's like 3 ounces. No, it's like 3 pounds. 22 seconds. And if you divide that by 72 laps, you basically get 0.3 a lap, which is the pace delta that he had over Max during qualifying was about 0.3. Yeah. Not saying that's just simple math there. It sums it up. It's easy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's
problem solved. Good night, everybody.
That's it. Done. Rest of the season's over. He's 0.3. It did prove that out in the race. About lap 15-ish is when it started to reveal that, remember when they were radioing, hey, what do you think? Who are we racing? That kind of odd conversation they were having. And the reality of it is he said, no, tires feel pretty good. And I think about lap 15, you could see he was still good on those tires, and the Red Bulls were struggling a lot at that point. Mm-hmm. And to the credit of McLaren, I know they've taken a couple pot shots about their strategy and overreaction or underreaction, those kind of things. And you and I have talked about in the past, if you're going to run with the big teams, that's got to be impeccable, your strategy, because you won't find Red Bull and Mercedes making those junior league mistakes typically, right?
Right.
And so McLaren, instead of overreacting, they went ahead and stuck to that plan. They felt that his pace was good enough. Even if they tried to undercut, they'd have it covered on fresh tires. They felt confident in that. And I think that started to really kind of reveal itself even as early as lap 15, 16 in my mind. But a fantastic drive by Lando, measured, didn't put a foot wrong, looked absolutely terrific in qualifying. What a great week for Lando.
Yeah, it is interesting when talking about the strategy. Obviously, we've seen them make a couple of reactionary calls, etc., that haven't gone their way, because it's like you got to get with the mindset that you have the best car, that you can win the race, that you have it in hand over the rest of the field. Don't make silly mistakes and think less of yourself or less of your car and your pace. And looks like they were a bit calmer with that, a little more confident, to let Lando, give him the information, make that call, and ultimately, whichever call they made, really, he was going to win the race. So,
I think so.
Pretty easy to make the calls from there. But yeah, I mean, he was a class above, right? I mean, his teammate was there, but his teammate wasn't even on the podium. So Lando was definitely in his element with that car at this track.
Yeah.
So, which is really important for him, because we've been talking about Oscar a lot. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, is Lando up to the Oscar challenge? Right. Well, there you go. He at least he pushed his feet off the desk this week, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. I would say Lando, came back with a very strong answer. That's for sure.
And I think it's also, sorry, interrupt.
Ahead.
It's also so different to be a one Grand Prix winner and a multi Grand Prix winner.
Yeah.
It's one thing to win a Grand Prix, and with Olivier Panis won one, Jochen Mass won one. There's Victoria Brambilla won a Grand Prix, but to do it more than once, then you're there, quite honestly. And I think that's just going to build up the confidence in Lando. Yeah,
I agree, and he can be kind of hard on himself. I think Lando's, he takes personal inventory, and I think he's in a lot of ways maybe his own worst critic. But so having that confidence, having a couple wins now under his belt, and
Yeah.
in such a dominant fashion here was really a boost, I think, for him too. I think that's really good for Lando's mindset going into the balance of this season with 9 more races. And if you look at that, whether he's got a realistic chance at winning the Drivers' Championship, that he can mount a challenge to the championship, I still think that confidence pays dividends in that Constructors' Championship for sure, and that'll hopefully pay dividends in the long run for McLaren. Oscar, let's talk about him. He also got jumped at the start as well, so both McLarens had a poor start, and they left him out a long time. And it's easy at the time to say, oh, man, you got to box him. You got it. But, much easier said than done. When you're the team calling strategy, you don't want to dump him out in the middle of a DRS train, right? So they were trying to find that gap to where they could box him, where he'd come out with a minimal impact and wouldn't leave too much work to do to get back up towards the front on fresher tires. So they, in the process, while they were waiting, he got undercut by both George Russell and Charles Leclerc. And Oscar managed to get back around the Mercedes pretty quickly. But I was a little surprised, Paul. He kind of stalled out, got up to Charles Leclerc and stalled out when trying to get around him for fourth. And I would say that, and we've talked about this in past podcasts, one of the hardest things, and I always go back to Charles Leclerc as a good example. I've mentioned this before, but Charles talking about how hard and how difficult it was to get on top of it when he was at Sauber, on how hard it was to get on top of the tires and to understand the tires and find the windows and management, tire management, and when to put them and not doing. And I think that Oscar is doing a really good job of getting his head around the HD tires, but I'd argue maybe the best part of that tire advantage that he had was pretty much used up by getting around the Mercedes.
Yeah.
Maybe leaving not a lot left for that Ferrari. But I don't want to discount the fact that Charles, I think, was driving a brilliant race in energy deployment and defense too.
Yeah, definitely was a surprise. Seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to be back on the podium, but Charles had different ideas. And you can say, okay, well, Piastri had the same tire as Lando, etc., but he didn't do the job. But you're right. You fight. You can take the peak out of a tire. You can destroy a tire where it just doesn't come back to you. And while Lando was able to jump in the car and manage his tires from the front. Very, very different. If you can manage your tires, they'll be in a whole different placement than if you're fighting it out behind it with air wash and fighting it out with other people. So I still am surprised. I don't think it was Oscar's best race at all. And Lando certainly points that out. We've pointed out, Perez was 22 seconds, behind Verstappen. Well, Oscar was further behind Lando. So I would say Oscar would be pretty upset with himself from not executing enough to take advantage of the car's obvious superiority. But I think, I'm surprised he won't be able to get by. But I said that's kudos to Charles for the fight he put on.
Yeah, and I don't want to take a big blanket of ills and throw this over the entire operation of McLaren, but could one, Paul, sort of lead to the notion that McLaren's comments in the past few races about clean air is king? Could one argue that the McLaren, if it's in clean air, it's a daunting asset, but if it's not in clean air, could that be a slight Achilles heel for them?
It could, and I think even the Red Bull was a bit like that, and we've seen the Mercedes in the past. Right?
Yeah.
It's hard when you see these numbers to give up on that just because of air wash, I think. So they're predicting, okay, we've got the fastest car, we should qualify out front, and then we'll lead from the front. It'll give us an even bigger advantage than our car already gives us. Right. And but if a mistake happens, you get stuck, then it's counterproductive, obviously. So I think that's a true statement. The big thing for McLaren is, they're just chunking out those points on Red Bull, aren't they? I mean, everyone's talking about the Drivers' Championship, but man, the Constructors' Championship, McLaren are for sure in the hunt against Red Bull.
That's where all the money's made.
Yep.
I can guarantee you Zach wants one of his drivers to win the constructors, of course.
Absolutely.
The drivers, of course
Yeah.
he does. Zach is a racer at heart. Of course he does. But he knows as well as anyone the constructors pays the money, and he desperately wants to make it go at that.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I don't know that Zach is the biggest Christian Horner fan in the world. So winning.
I'm not
that
sure who is actually when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So winning that constructors championship, I think, would be huge for Zach. I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Red Bull. You've got Sergio Perez down in P6, Max Verstappen in P2. Max had a really good start, jumped Lando, led the first part of the race, but he didn't, as I mentioned, he didn't pull out a very large gap, second and a half-ish around that. And that was really kind of the first sign, in past, if he got the jump, pulled out a second and a half, and then you would see Max kind of pull away 6, 7, 8 seconds. And that's in the last 3 years, 2 years at least, you might see that. That didn't happen here. And that was the first sign that he was vulnerable to McLaren's better degradation, better balance on that McLaren chassis, and better long run pace overall. Lando passed him, and then this left the team. Your strategy kicks in. What do we do? Is there a way that we can mount? Is there a way that we could unsettle McLaren as Martin Brundle said, is there a way we could try to, get our way back up there? So the team tried the undercut. That didn't work. So Max knew he didn't have the pace, and at that point began managing his tires to finish P2.
Yeah.
It was his 200th Grand Prix at the ripe old age of, what is he, 26, 27 years old?
Is that old?
Grand Prix.
Jesus.
Yes. Oh, gosh. I know. Ready for his AARP card and to retire. So, yeah, it was damaging. And I think that's what Max said. He said, look, P2 is about, that's where we were. We knew it, and I raced to it. That's what I did.
I mean, for him, he is all about the Drivers' Championship.
Yes.
And he knows what he needs to do to manage that. And his time will come when the Red Bull will win some races. So he's just making sure not to panic, don't overreact, get some good solid points, don't let Lando get too close. So
Yeah, exactly. For Checo, so he qualified P5, Paul, dropped down and finished in P6. I'd say that Checo did better, so that's good news. And he did hold off Russell late in the race, so that's a start. But he did finish a spot down from where he started. Checo says that the weekend exposed. This is interesting. I read the team press release. So Checo had said that the weekend exposed a few areas to the team and where they need to focus on, and then combined with Max's data that they have a lot of work to do, but this race and both 72 laps on both chassis really did kind of hone where they're struggling. So that's where they're going to focus. So maybe they harvest some good data. They kind of made the statement, well, we had a shutdown. We couldn't do anything. So we had to take the car we finished before the summer break. And
right.
Nobody did anything over the holiday.
No, nothing going on here.
Nothing to see. Checo said that they did get data. There was some discussion that the older floor on Max's car also was worth about 0.2 second deficit, 0.2 deficit in his pace. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. Your scorecard on Checo?
What do you give him, a 5 or 6?
Yeah.
He's still not doing what he needs to be doing, but at least he didn't do anything disastrous like some other drivers on the grid. So
yeah, right.
he didn't do enough to let him say, "Oh, what the hell did we do?" But I'm still think they should be expecting more from him, right? I mean, the thing is, when the car was dominant, he didn't make use of it, and now the car is not the best car, and it's unfortunate for him.
That window is gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
When he could have been winning races.
Could have been winning races. Certainly should have been in the top 3 in qualifying, and he wasn't, and now he probably won't be. Yeah, unless they solve the car. Max can do it because Max is Max. Max is overachieving the car, but Perez is not, probably rightfully so, because he needs to just finish the damn races, right? And not do something silly.
Right. Next up is Ferrari as Charles Leclerc in P3, Carlos Sainz in P5. This was a good example of, when we talk about lacking a single lap pace, but the race pace is much better. And oftentimes in the last couple of years, you would hear people in commentary say that about Red Bull, that, maybe they weren't the ultimate quickest over the qualifying session, but their long run pace is astounding, right? This is actually a good tangible example of that. They were lacking that single lap pace on Friday, Paul. I didn't factor Ferrari at all. I didn't have in my fantasy picks. I didn't think they'd be there. Even in qualifying, it's kind of like, But out of nowhere, Charles Leclerc managed to get a great start, got past Checo, and then managed in a fantastic tactical move from the strategy team to undercut both Russell and Piastri. Yeah. And that strategy was on point. I know a lot of people like to poke fun at Ferrari about, their strategy, but they nailed it this weekend. Their long run pace was very competitive and enough to hold off Piastri on much newer tires. So I just got to say kudos to Charles Leclerc for some very crafty driving, very crafty energy deployment, and just at just the right spots on the track. Yeah. A fantastic drive from Charles Leclerc.
Yeah,
and he surprised himself, Paul.
Yeah, he did. He surprised everybody, right?
Yeah.
It was spectacular, really. I mean, so that really did define a lot of, if you hadn't noticed before that qualifying pace isn't everything, and one lap can really mask an ultimate team's real race pace and really learn. And obviously, this track being with the degradation issues just re-emphasizes that, and the percentages go up on what you can lose if you do have a car that can't take care of the tires, and Ferrari got their head around it. They, even if they didn't have the single pace, it just shows you that that's one of their strengths that we need to keep in the back of our pocket and be aware of going down the road at the different tracks that obviously have whole different levels of degradation eating asphalt.
Yeah, and Paul, we often talk about long tracks like Spa where because of the length of the track, your imperfections, whether they're car, chassis balance, whatever it might be, or driver error, getting a corner not right or whatever. We always talk about long tracks exposing that and compounding that over race and how that is really hard to recover. But the same applies on these shorter tracks too, Paul, right? I mean, there's not enough track left to really overcome a mistake that you've made. There's not much room there, right? And in Ferrari's case, that long run pace was absolutely there, very competitive. It wasn't exposed by the shortness of the track or anything like that. And then for Charles to nail every single corner, had he been ham-fisted, sometimes we know he can overdrive the car a little bit. Yeah. He didn't pull any of that off, and he stuck it and finished. I just think it was a fantastic drive from Charles.
Yeah, I think they must have known a little bit because the way the strategy worked out, they were kind of hoping that was going to be the case. But it was very impressive those last laps for him to, hold off Oscar till Oscar had really toasted his tires.
Yeah.
As we see, the DRS was powerful enough for a lot of people, had a lot of easy times getting around people down the straight into the DRS zone. But Charles managed his power deployment very, very well.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do. It's easy. It's not easy to do, but you can do it for 2-3 laps until you're fully under the deployment. So you've really got to manage where and when you regain that energy. And I think he just did a phenomenal job in using that to his advantage and keeping Oscar out of a really good DRS close range to just drive on by.
Yeah, I agree. Carlos made good progress as well. He started 10th on the grid, made several overtakes, very competitive pace to finish up in P6. Neither driver, as I mentioned, expected to have their pace, given that their practice and qualifying times were kind of off the mark, but they found something friendly. Maybe on Sunday, maybe it was the track conditions, maybe the temperatures, maybe just the decent tire degradation. Maybe they were managing the tires and they weren't that hard on this particular track. And I would say that Carlos's hard compound pace was really good on
Yeah.
that last stint. I thought it was really good. I know I'm a Ferrari fan. I don't want to sound like a Ferrari fanboy. I mean, look, at the end of the day, third and sixth sucks for Ferrari, right? They want to
Yeah.
win, and they should be. I don't want to overplay this, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was as bad a weekend as Ferrari's had in recent races.
It isn't, because they've been slipping, right? It's been, Mercedes. Who can win this week? Mercedes, Red Bull, or is it McLaren? No one's really talking about Ferrari right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'll be around, but they don't have the pace to win a race right now. Hopefully,
Yeah.
they will for their sake at Monza next week.
Yeah. Great.
So yeah, I think it was a step back up into the top 4 lineup, but they still have a lot of work to do for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton P8, George Russell in P7. After a few wins, I had Mercedes much higher in the order in my fantasy picks. Again, totally wrong. I misread the tea leaves on this one miserably. Lewis started down P14, made the best of that soft compound start. Went really long on those softs, got up into the top 10 running on those softs. Once he switched to the hards, he had really good pace on those hards. Then he marched back to that field, fighting his way back up. I actually really enjoyed watching Lewis's race. I think he made the most of what he could from where he started. Perhaps you could argue a little bit whether it was the team and the setup of the car in qualifying, or maybe he cooked it in qualifying. You could argue he dug himself a hole there that he had to crawl up, but crawl it he did, and finished up in P8. So not a bad race for him, and his pace, as I mentioned on those hards, was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but put yourself in a hole like that. You got to have a pretty good car to fight your way through. I certainly don't think they're popping any champagne after that race. That's pretty dismal after the pace they've had, and ruining obviously a race, point scoring from Russell due to that infringement. So, it's best of a bad situation, but definitely a bad situation for them here.
Yeah, it was.
I know it's a unique circuit, and we can't. It's not like a soothsayer for the rest of the season at all. But I think they kind of look more like we'd expect Ferrari have been this week.
Yeah.
That's not where they want to be. That's not where their momentum was carrying them, for sure.
No, they were just winning races. So this was, I think I came by my fantasy picks, and in all earnestness, So I was as surprised.
By the way, the Parc Fermé is still third out of 100 in the world.
Third in the world.
Yeah, third in the world. Well done,
Great
Parc
job,
Fermé
Parc Fermé.
fans. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing well as a group. I'm letting them all down, but thankfully we have some listeners that are doing great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Russell jumped up to P3 at the start, had a good start. Then he was undercut by Leclerc and couldn't keep Piastri behind him. What was interesting to me was the call to box. I didn't quite know if I was tracking on that. So they called him into box late as Sainz was coming a little closer. I'm not sure if Sainz was a given that he was going to pass him or not. I don't know. I'm curious if seating track position was the right call, as Piastri was really faced with the same option too, but he chose track position over fresh tires. And at some point, the commentary team was suggesting, well, Lewis is on fresh tire, he'll have to move over for George. And I thought, well, no, that would be horrible. They box him late. He had track position. They box him late, and then you ask him to move over for Lewis. That's BS.
Right.
Thankfully, they didn't do that. That would have been BS. So I didn't agree with that. I'm glad they didn't do that. The second stop cost him a position, and I'm curious if he didn't have enough pace to hold Sainz off and finish in P6.
We don't know. I guess they didn't have the faith.
Yeah.
But I thought I thought he would have the pace, and that they were going for a 1 point fastest lap, but Norris obviously thwarted everybody on that one. So that's what I thought they were doing, but obviously it didn't work out, and they'll have to rethink that process, I would imagine.
Yeah. And speaking of Norris, he got that fast lap on the final lap on 4 lap.
That's nuts.
Hards.
Absolutely nuts.
Crazy.
And you got both Mercedes out there on new rubber, just
Did
flailing
not see
away.
That coming. Did not see that coming.
No.
I thought Lewis had it because he was on fresh
Yeah.
tires.
Why wouldn't you, right? Yeah.
Let's see, Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P9, Esteban Ocon, P15. Gasly started in P9, finished in P9 after good qualifying, got into Q3. He was pretty feisty all day, Paul.
Yeah.
Several passes, and lots of those battled into turn one on the outside, no less. And I thought that was good. I enjoyed his passing. He was aggressive going in there. He held off cars behind him at the start, ran long, and then used his tire offset to pass Hulkenberg and hold off Alonso late in the race to finish up in P9 and in the points. And a points delivery for his boss, his new boss, Ollie Oaks, his first race as a team boss. So
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, because they looked dismal earlier in the week.
yeah,
I mean, they look like pretty much about the worst team apart from, the Stake F1 team or whatever.
right.
So yeah, for them to actually get into Q3 and then stay there and score points, I think was massive for the team and for Gasly. I think he was feisty. I think he out Alonso, didn't he?
He
In that
did.
first turn. I mean, that's exactly what Alonso did last year, from my remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure it's a good idea to study Alonso moves and use them against him.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty funny.
It is funny. Esteban said he was stuck in the DRS train, couldn't make much of an impression on those in front of him. I'm kind of curious about that performance delta between him and Gasly, because in my mind, Ocon's normally faster than that.
Hmm.
He's usually thereabouts with Pierre.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I don't know. I'm wondering about the motivation, if it's still there with him. I'm not suggesting that he's purposely loafing. I'm just kind of curious because
Yeah.
I would have expected Esteban to be more of a factor.
Yeah.
He's quicker.
You would. I don't think he's unmotivated. I think Ocon's usually pretty motivated. It didn't work out for him, but I think he's more motivated to prove them wrong,
Yeah,
getting
maybe.
rid of him, quite
Yeah,
honestly.
maybe. Yeah.
But you never know how the dynamics go. They are a French team after all.
Wink.
So the dynamics in a French team are second to none. Not necessarily in a good way. So
Just ask Alain Prost.
yes, exactly,
Yeah,
and
he'll
many
tell you
more
all about
along
it.
the way. So
Yeah.
I think once you're on your way out, you may as well just walk out the door, quite honestly. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I think they're in a desperate situation where they can't afford to do that and play those games, but it doesn't mean they don't. So,
Right.
yeah.
I totally agree. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P13, Fernando Alonso P10. Both cars looked competitive this weekend qualifying, but they lost spots at the start. And realistically, they were just hoping to finish where they started. But Lance got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That left him out of the points. Alonso did manage a spirited run to P10. The sting was losing to the Alpine, right? So that's not a good result for them. They would have assumed they would have been ahead of the Alpine.
Yeah, well, everyone.
Yeah, they knew the top 8 positions were going to be the top 4
Right.
teams. They knew
Yeah.
that. But they figured they'd be 5th, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, tough weekend for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation when literally if every car finishes, you're really fighting for 9th and 10th place at this point.
Yeah. How
It's
motivating is that for Fred?
yeah, not very. It's a shame because they were feisty there not too long ago, but seems like they've lost the juice. Someone lost the notebook with all the good stuff on it.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I can't tell them how to retrace it, but definitely probably needs a shake up there to try and get themselves pushing forward in a different direction, I would say.
Martin caught up with Lawrence on his grid walk, and he was asking about the team, and Lawrence, you know how serious Lawrence is. He goes, oh, what do you think? We'd like to finish where we started, and blah, blah, blah. And then as they started to walk away, Martin had the microphone. He goes, and when did you say that Adrian Newey was going to start? And Lawrence was like, what? He goes, I didn't mention anything about Adrian Newey. Martin's like, I'm just being cheeky. Trying to catch him off guard there. Well done, Martin. I thought that was good. Let's see, Haas F1, Nico Hulkenberg, P11, Kevin Magnussen down in P18, despite rumors of court drama and potential for confiscation of their cars and assets regarding the Urquali situation. Haas soldiered on for the weekend, saying that their lawyers were looking into it. Kevin started from pit lane because he'd made a chassis adjustment while in Parc Fermé. So he started, they put him on hards, ran longer than anyone else on those hards, and to try to make that work. Unfortunately, they were hoping for a safety car, something, Paul, that would be a cheap stop. But we didn't even have a yellow flag during this race.
No,
And
it's
so
crazy, right?
Yeah, it was when there was a 67% chance of a safety car.
Yeah.
Once he did
Another thing I lost in my picks. I said two
I
safety
did
cars
say-
and
I said
zero.
one. I lost that.
Yeah.
Once he did box, obviously fell down out of the points, and it didn't. You gambled. It didn't work. Nothing really to do with Kevin, but that happened. By contrast, though, Nico boxed early, went long, and ran out of tires to hold off Gasly and Alonso at that point. But I did kind of like the scraps with Nico. I thought those were good.
Yeah. It's. I don't know what to say. They threw something against the wall, and likelihood it would have worked.
Right.
If it wasn't those darn kids. So.
Yeah, right. Wasn't for all those faster cars.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're fighting for the last two places. You may as well give it a go. It certainly wasn't a bad idea. Yeah, normally that would be a fine way to attack it, but this race just kept going, which is maybe why it was a little pedestrian affair, not the exciting, fencing that we've seen in the past recently.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Let's see. RB, Daniel Ricciardo down in P12, Yuki Tsunoda P17. Yuki started on softs, and they didn't really work out like they did for Lewis at the beginning. So they stopped him early, and this put him on a two-stop strategy, Paul, and that clearly is a slower strategy. And then to add to that, he said he didn't think the stop timing was right. They got that wrong. He didn't think that was correct, and then they put him out in traffic all day, and that meant that he finished down in P17. So it's going to be somebody's ass at RB when Yuki gets all done with him.
Yes. I'm not going to tune into Yuki's rants this week.
No.
It'd be just onslaught of white noise and swearing.
Yeah, it will be. Let's see. Dan didn't have the best qualifying. He was beat by Yuki in qualifying, but he started P13 thanks to a few penalties ahead of him, got moved up, and he turned that into a P12, so he finished a spot higher than he did. In the end, Zandvoort just wasn't a friendly track.
Not friendly. Not friendly.
Not friendly.
No.
Yeah. And so Dan was like, hey, we'll look to bounce back at Monza. Okay.
Yeah, of course we will.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're there, Dan. I don't know.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I love Dan's positivity. Yeah, I really felt like it was a positive race. I delivered everything I could. And, he's sort of a bigging up press release there after the race.
Yeah, how do you even... Yeah, it's what you have to do, but it's painful to listen to.
It is painful. Painful. Let's see. That leaves us down at Williams. You got Alex Albon P14, Logan Sargeant P16. What a miserable week for James and team. They had the disqualification for Albon due to an errant upgrade that was outside of the FIA regulation measurements on his floor. Then you had the car totaled on Saturday by Logan. Lots of talk about Williams asking around to find somebody else to finish the season.
Hey, has anyone got a driver in here?
And Toto's like, I have Mick Schumacher. You mean Mick no front wing Schumacher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some young kid there? No, I don't know him.
Yeah.
But we do have Mick Schumacher.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I was James, I'd be on the phone over to Laurent Mecky's. Could we borrow Liam?
Yeah. We don't have the lobster thermidor today, but we do have a fish sandwich we'd like to entice you with. Oh.
How about some cod cut-ups? No thanks.
Well, maybe it's better than what I have, but I'm not that excited about it.
I know.
Yeah. It's nuts.
Albon was running pretty well.
Yeah.
Even though,
from where he came from, we know how hard it was to move up. It was nearly an impossible factor.
He did. He kind of had his toe in the points, but then they switched to the two-stopper, and that didn't.
Yeah, I'm not exactly privy to how Formula One measure things and do things, but if you bring new components, you should definitely get it measured by the sanctioning body and not just trust it yourself. That's what we have to do. If we change the setup on the car every time, we have to roll that car out. We've got our own measurements of what we made, and it should be good. Then you take it to the scrutineering bay, they recheck it, and maybe it's off. So you got to adjust yourself to what the scrutineering bay is telling you, whether you think it's right or wrong. And so that's a misstep. Once again, maybe another learning curve of being a new boss. right? Now, what do they do with Logan? I mean, they already made the mistake by keeping him going.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not paying off, is it?
No.
I would not have him drive again. Thing is, we'll never see the best Logan be now because he's absolutely destroyed mentally.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? I mean, you're not going to turn them around by sitting them down and say, "Come on, fella, we all believe in you." Obviously, you don't believe in you. You're being fired. Obviously, we don't believe in you. You keep crashing the cars.
Yeah.
So it's time to move on. You're not going to be worse by putting a new driver in there.
Right.
You're just not.
No.
He's not quick and he's crashing.
Right.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Right.
I could do that.
There you go. So let's stop the pretense and get on with it and move on. Make a hard decision and get someone in there. There are some really good drivers who are sitting around.
Yep.
Who would be more than capable of jumping in that car and taking it a bit further up.
I think any of those teams, whether it's McLaren or RB or any one of those, I would think they'd be interested in getting their reserve driver in that car for the balance of the season just to get seat time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's politics involved and different manufacturers crossing and, you have to learn a whole new book and page and sometimes you don't want another driver getting a look in on what this manufacturer is doing. Yeah. So those things have to be taken into account, but I still think there's a better solution than what they've chosen.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm thinking either Mick, I'm sure, why Mick, Toto? He's been in the news yesterday as bigging up Mick as an option, or today. Why not Kimi Antonelli?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, it's unfortunate. Really bad. And if that wasn't bad enough, we get down to Kick Sauber. This was the only team to finish 2 laps down.
Yeah. And I think they're probably covered up. If there's any Audi badges anywhere, they're kind of covering them up right now. Kind of like a paper bag over your head. Yeah. When your team's losing everything. It's like, whoa, this is embarrassing. Yeah. What team? we're not Audi yet. No. Too bad. We'll fix it when we become Audi.
No, we're Steak. F1.
Yeah.
Kick.
Yeah, we're puke green.
Right. Let the sponsors take all the heat.
With a driver that shows his butt all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The driver that shows his butt everywhere. Yeah. It's bad. Paul, how do you keep the mechanics and engineers? How do they stay motivated in a situation like this for the team? I do not know.
Yeah, you probably can't.
Yeah.
Promises of tomorrow, but
I know, I feel so
that's all you can do. But as we've kind of talked about it before, there's going to be a big turnover, and not necessarily everyone that's there is going to be there.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't know.
Yeah, right.
Right, and so that makes it even less motivation because they're like, well, I got to go find another job. Obviously, they haven't even talked to me about what I'm doing next year.
Right. Tough. All right, let's give out some awards. We always do that. The first award we give out is Move the Race.
We'll do it live!
Yes, Move the Race, Paul. Who'd you have?
I'm giving it to Lando for that last lap push to destroy the field mentally. I mean, to do that on old tires was just what a slap in the face.
It was. 44-lap-old hard compounds. Nailed it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That was a Max move if there ever was one.
Yeah. And I don't think he even forewarned the McLaren team that he was doing that, but he obviously felt pretty good in that car. That's all I can say.
Yeah. What did he say after the race? He parroted Max, "Simply Wonderful" or whatever it was.
Oh yes, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're buddies. I mean, that's a jab at Max. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's a savage." It was like they're friends, and Max will think it's funny. So they're making
Simply Lovely.
Simply Lovely.
Yeah. There you
go. Yeah. Let's see. I had Leclerc's undercut.
Okay.
I thought that was perfectly timed. Put him in that position, undercut 2 cars, held on, and made a podium out of something that quite honestly probably wasn't podium
material. Yeah.
So
I would say.
I thought that was a great move. All right, next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live!
All right, Paul.
All right. It was just something that's kind of bugged me for a while, and I
Yeah.
saw it again. It just kind of cropped up. It's the pointless DRS block or move. It's like the guys that got DRS, he's like 2 times on your butt, and then you pull hard right to block that inside pass, and he just drives by you on the outside, and it's turned in before you even get to the breaking point by that,
Yeah.
It's just like, what are you doing? I drive in the middle of the road, for crying out loud, but don't make it even easier. You just pull out. They're not going to try and outbrake you on the inside. They go around the outside. They go like,
Yeah.
it's just maybe they're like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm going to make a drama out of it,
Yeah. Make it obvious.
Yeah.
Make it obvious that it's DRS and they're not.
Yeah,
better
it's
than
not me.
Yeah. I mean, I would hold the line on the outside as you normally would. If they're going to go for it with DRS,
Make them go offline.
Offline.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Absolutely.
There's always marbles out there and stuff. Make them work for it. Right?
Yep.
And make him get it wound up on the inside of a corner where he's got a more steeper angle at the apex.
Yeah, or get in the middle and make him question his future.
Yeah, and why he ever chose to do this for a living. Right, I agree. Let's see, my donkey, it was really Logan and Williams both.
Yeah.
It's getting the measurement wrong. They said, oh, it's just by millimeters. Like, well, okay, but if it was that small, then you should have nailed it.
Yeah.
And I'm James knows that, and I'm sure he'll take that on his shoulders. But it's a bad move, and then destroying the car is just.
Yep. It's a process problem that they got to fix.
Yep. Exactly. All right, and then final award is drive of the race.
Get down.
Yes. Drive of the race. Who'd you have?
I'm giving it to Chuck.
Good for you.
Yeah, I thought it was very impressive in not even fighting off the best car in the field.
Yeah.
For several laps.
Yep.
With newer tires behind you.
Yeah.
I think that was mighty impressive management of pace and where to go fast and where not to hold Oscar, because as I said, we do. Oscar's a pretty damn good driver, and he'll get past done when he can. So Charles outdid himself there. He did a great job.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to pick Charles, and I thought everybody was going to call me a Ferrari fanboy, so I ended up picking Lando because I thought it was a superlative weekend for Lando. Just a sublime race from him.
Yep.
But I agree with you on Charles. I just think that was terrific. It was great. All right. Quick mailbag.
You've got
Our
mail.
friend Gary says, it's not a question, but it was just kind of a funny comment. He said, well, that was an exciting race. Tongue in cheek. He said, and look at the point standings now. Max leads Norris by 70 points. There are 9 races and 3 sprints left in the season. Let's say that Lando wins every one with Max second. That means that he makes up 9 times 7 plus 3 equals 66 points. So Norris still finishes second in the championship, and McLaren can kick themselves in the backside for ordering him to let Piastri win in Hungary.
Yeah. But
we
you know
talked
what?
about it at the time.
We did, but you know what? They, as I said, they want to win the manufacturers' championship.
They do.
And to do that, they need Oscar on their side.
They do.
And they don't want to lose Oscar.
That's right.
So I still think that decision was correct, even keeping the drivers' championship in, even if they lost by that amount.
Yeah, I agree.
It's you can't change the dynamic in the team. You can't start having the drivers second guess whether you're being truthful about strategy and things like that. So
no, I remember thinking about it quite a bit around that race, and I was thinking, if I'm Zach, I want the constructors. I need Oscar higher in the points. I need the cars up there. I need Oscar 100% all on board. I need some harmony in there. I'll talk to Lando about it. He'll understand, but we need the points, as a team. So I agree. But good comment, Gary. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, we have precious little time. You're going to be down at COTA this weekend, but you also have the Italian Grand Prix at Monza.
Man, so much to look forward to this week.
I know. It's going to be amazing. We're going to be back next week reviewing the Italian Grand Prix. It's pretty exciting.
Shall do, yes.
But until that time, you can leave your comment. Tell us what you think about the Dutch Grand Prix. You can go let us know what you think about that lion and the driver parade lap, as I posted on TikTok, and let us know. But until that time, you can go to theparkforme.com, share your opinion as always. If you like the podcast, you can go and give us a good rating on your favorite podcast player. Spread the word, spread the news. I'm sorry. Somebody just did not like our podcast 900. Left a
Really?
comment. Yeah, just slated us for that. That was
Wow.
unfortunate. So,
Well, I had fun,
yeah.
so that's what's important.
I did too. I had a good time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah.
Every now and then, you got to let your head down and have a little fun, right?
Well, it was the 900th podcast too.
Yeah.
And, you're thinking, well, I mean, could we? I mean, it's self-serving, but after 900 episodes and thousands and thousands
think
of
it's
hours. I was
Rightfully
thinking,
so.
Yeah, could I have a little, respite, as you might call it, Paul?
Yeah.
But yeah, I got slated. No longer a Patreon supporter. So we need somebody to replace him as a Patreon supporter. So if you're out there, I appreciate it. He's like, all these other podcasts are mentioned. You're not even mentioned. That's how bad you are. He's like, oh, okay. That's fine. But anyway, thanks for listening when you did. But if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, you can do that. You just go to our website. Down at the very bottom or on the right-hand side is a link to it. You can go and support. And when you do that, you can join us in our live audiences when we record at the usual time. But next week, Paul and I will be back to do it all over again and review the Italian Grand Prix. Should be exciting. As a Ferrari fanboy, I'm not holding out much hope, but let's see what happens. They did win Monaco, so there's that. You think
Very
those
similar tracks.
You think those Ferraris will be trimmed out?
Yeah. I don't think they trim them out enough, quite honestly, but there you go.
I'll be
I
surprised.
don't want to give you false hopes.
I know. I'll be surprised if you make it through the Lesmos or the Ascari. They'll be so trimmed out.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Until that time, we'll come back and do it all over again. This is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Campers, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.